Good evening and welcome to Hello, It's Us, a program based on the premise that life in general goes better when all of us are working together as opposed to when it's you, me, and them working at cross purposes. Hello, It's Us is brought to you by a collaboration between the Extended Dream Foundation and Public Access Television Channel 18. Tonight we were going to have my partner and I talking about disability and aging. Unfortunately, Keith couldn't make it today, so I guess I will talk about it for a while. I'm Terry Cunningham. Most of what I'll be talking about today will be specifically related to spinal cord injury. The aging process for an individual with a disability can pretty much be described in two words. It sucks. Once somebody acquires a spinal cord injury, there's a lot of what seems like very small, trivial things that you have to pay incredible attention to. It's very easy for someone with a spinal cord injury to get what's called a pressure ulcer, which is very much like what it sounds like. It can come from a wrinkle in clothing, it can come from a patch pocket on a pair of jeans, it can come from socks being too tight, it can come from shoelaces being too tight. Just anything that causes a ripple or a little pressure spot on the skin. Skin can start to die with the loss of oxygen from that in 30 to 60 seconds, I believe it is. So it's really important to make sure everything's smooth, to make sure that you constantly are changing pressure. One of the ways I change pressure is to tilt my chair forward and backwards and kind of shake and shimmy around just to give some relief to the parts of the body, particularly the bony prominences, that can be starting to cause pressure spots. And because we all think we're bulletproof, we all, unfortunately, don't pay nearly as much attention to a lot of this stuff as we should. It's important to have the best possible equipment to help prevent stuff. That begins with cushions. Unfortunately, a lot of insurance companies and Medicare don't want to buy the top of the line equipment. When I was first injured, the first cushion I got was literally a piece of 4-inch thick foam rubber, which through the years, looking at other cushions, those cushions were worthless. You set on foam rubber and it very quickly breaks down and doesn't provide the support you need. So back in the day, then you move toward a foam rubber cushion that was kind of an egg carton shape. Then you might move to a water cushion, which were horrible for balance, much like an unbaffled waterbed is. So you'd be rolling along and stop, and your cushion wouldn't stop with you. It would continue to rock back and forth. Then there were other, either gel-filled or air cushions or any number out there. what became the state of the art, and still is today, is an air cushion that has that egg carton look to it called a rojo. And that pretty much, as I say, is considered state of the art right now. Unfortunately, lots of insurance companies and Medicare don't just automatically buy a person that piece of equipment off the top of the list. They instead require people to start at the lowest end cushion and then move up. And you have to develop a history of pressure ulcers for them to justify spending the amount of money for the cushion. And the cushions are $500 to $800. So they're being really, really penny wise and pound foolish in doing this, because once somebody gets a pressure ulcer, even if it's caught immediately, these things heal incredibly slowly. And it's not uncommon for one to take months to heal, or even years. I've taken years to heal them before. So if you're in the hospital for basically one day, that's more than the cost of what a cushion would be, what the good cushion would be. And so it's just ridiculous not to get it. But it's just really, really important, not only if you have a spinal cord injury, but for anybody who's spending a lot of time either in bed or in a chair up but not moving around a lot, and which is another thing. You know, recliners or regular chairs were never intended to have somebody sit in them, you know, for 15, 16 hours a day without having some kind of additional padding or cushion on it, because they break down very quickly. If you know someone or have a member of your family that his mobility is limited and they spend most of their time in a recliner, or God forbid they have a wheelchair that doesn't have a cushion and they go around in that, you're just begging for a problem if they don't have the right kind of protection. Which also goes for mattresses. You know, they're, depending on somebody's history, a regular mattress isn't going to take care of it. You need to be working with medical professionals to make sure people have what they need. Additionally, what your diet is, how much fluid you drink, has a whole lot to do with how healthy you are, how your skin is. You know, doctors always encourage people to drink, 8 to 10 glasses of water a day. Well, there's a multitude of reasons for that, aside from keeping the body fleshed out and the urinary tract and bladder and kidneys and that fleshed out. Being well hydrated keeps your skin in good shape. And even having been told that from the beginning of rehab, I knew a lot of people who didn't drink as much as they should. I did, because I didn't want surgery. If you don't drink properly, you can get kidney stones, you can get bladder stones, and they're just not a lot of fun. And it was a whole lot easier to drink enough water or cranberry juice or whatever to make sure you took care of your skin right. Back then, when they talked about cigarettes and smoking, and that smoking had an effect on skin. it never occurred to me then that they were talking about anything but somebody's face. You know, I couldn't quite make that connection from the cigarette that was hanging out of my mouth to a pressure sore in my butt, foot, or leg. You know, and I wish I had paid a bit more attention to some of those things now. You know, Mickey Mantle's famous statement of, you know, if I'd known I was going to live this long, I'd have taken better care of myself. It is really true in a lot of this stuff. So how you eat is really important, and, you know, how to exercise, and that's, you know, another one of those things that society in general don't do a good job on. And, you know, as you'd get out of the hospital, they would say, you know, you need to do this, you need to have, you know, range of motion every day for, you know, a half hour or whatever in the morning and possibly in the evening. And, you know, you start out doing that and trying to be very diligent. And as life goes on, that extra half hour in the morning or half hour at night becomes harder and harder to find. And you know, you don't notice that if you skip that, things are changing and you're getting stiff. For, you know, you can counteract that some if you lift weights or are using a manual chair or, you know, some of that stuff to stay active. But when you stop, it's very noticeable. I used a manual chair for 28 years. So got lots of exercise. When I decided to go to a power chair, my plan then was to switch back and forth between the manual chair and the power chair every couple days so that I would stay in shape. Well, unfortunately, that never quite worked out, because if I had something come up all of a sudden and I was in my manual chair, I couldn't go and get something done because I had to change the van that I drove from in my chair to fit the power chair and not the manual chair, so I couldn't drive from the manual chair anymore. So, you know, it just doesn't take long to lose that muscle tone and that you have if you don't really continue on some kind of an exercise or a weight lifting program. You just really have to watch and keep yourself in shape and watch your weight, and that very much like everybody else does. And with a lot of some of the new stuff in medicine that's come along through the years, everybody's living longer, including, you know, folks with disabilities. A lot of the antibiotics have taken care of some of the problems that folks have. Folks with a spinal cord injury are most apt to have the biggest problems and to potentially die from bladder infections, pressure ulcers, or respiratory issues, because those are part of our systems that just don't work the same after an injury. And after you use them for years and years and decades, you know, it finally catches up with you. So making sure that, you know, you actually listen to what doctors say. And I will be the first to admit that I don't always like what doctors say, so I choose not to. And again, being in the bulletproof thing, and it's really important to actually answer the questions that doctors ask you truthfully. And when they ask if you've had difficulty breathing or if you're having pain here and there, you know, it's not being macho and it's not being smart to deny that stuff if it's really happening. And I've done that for years. You know, nah, not me, no, not bothering at all. Well, you know, as a result, in the last 9 or 10 months, I've probably spent more time in emergency rooms and with doctor's appointments than I have in years. And things just start catching up with you. And that's why I was kind of hoping Keith was going to be here today. Keith's a little older than I, but he and I are starting to have a lot of the same issues. We've both had some fairly significant bladder infections over the last several months. And bladder infections, and that's another thing. I have been in a chair for over 43 years, and it was just in the last couple months that I found out bladder infections make you more susceptible to pressure wounds. Nobody ever told me that. That, you know, bladder infections do dehydrate you. That then causes blood pressure issues. That then can cause blood infections, which can kill you. And I've, in the last couple of weeks, been going through some of that. My blood pressure has been a roller coaster for years. Nurses absolutely hate taking my blood pressure because it's just as likely it's going to be 210 over 105 as it's going to be 80 over 38. Neither of those sets of numbers inspire confidence in nurses. They get a little freaked out because they don't think you should be talking to them if you reach either of those. But as they say, it's just the whole aging process then. And, you know, the years of having used a manual wheelchair and pushed it myself, I have started getting at my arms and shoulders, which was actually why I went to a power chair in the late 90s, was that I knew, you know, my shoulders weren't going to last forever, and before I needed rotator cuff surgery or something like that, I decided to ease off on it. But there's just, you know, so much stuff, and you need to start paying attention to things like blood pressure and diabetes and know what kinds of things run in your family and try doing some preventive stuff. You know, I know so many folks who have a history of diabetes, yet ignore it. No. But, you know, your sister said it, your dad did it, your grandpa had it. Nah. And you risk so much with potential issues with diabetes, you know, because that affects circulation. You can start getting wounds. You can start having to have body parts amputated because you get a wound and they don't heal. You know, it can affect your eyesight. It can cause heart issues, strokes. You know, there's just so many reasons to be paying attention and to take care of yourself. And as I say, you know, that the changes that have come along with medicine keep people going for longer and longer. But you know, you really need to be listening to folks so that that longer and longer you get is quality time and not just time you sit around with effects from the injuries you have. Part of the aging and disability issues too are emotional and psychological ones that, as you watch anybody age, part of that process is you start to lose skills that you had before. You can't do, either you can't do things as quickly or you can't do them at all. When my grandpa was in his 70s, he gardened and that, and was for years. He was going to quit gardening. Can't do it anymore, not going to do it, don't want to do it, da-da-da-da-da. And I said, well, what's the problem? It takes me 2 hours to weed my garden now. Okay. Used to take me a half hour. And I said, Grandpa, that was 25 years ago. What else do you have to do anyway? No, he never quit gardening, but that was, he had noticed that. Yeah. Your balance may start to go. And again, I use my grandpa as an example. He'd go out and start weeding his garden and be bent over for 45 minutes weeding, and would stand up all of a sudden, and he'd pass out. He'd pass out in the middle of the garden. And he'd come to and look around and be embarrassed and be annoyed if anybody had seen him. So he'd get on his hands and knees and crawl down to the end of the garden where there was a fence so that he could pull himself up by the fence post. And neighbors would be out and yelling to see if he was okay and how he was doing. And of course he was doing okay. Ask somebody to come over and help him? No, never do something like that. And those kind of things are so common as people age. And there are a lot of things that 10 years ago I could do that I can't do anymore. And it really is upsetting, and that as time goes on, you need more and more help, and it's hard to admit that. It was hard to admit that when I was 18. But you have to get, that's something you have to get used to. But that's just part of the issues. And Keith, I know, would have had a lot of things to add to this too. But, as I say, that it's just so important to pay attention to things, to take care of yourself right, because whatever you want to believe, you're not bulletproof. You're not going to be the one person that beats Father Time. It's not a bad thing to have to ask for help at some point. Everybody does. It doesn't mean you're any less of a person. It just means you're aging. And I'm sure we'll have some more conversations with other folks on this. Want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Enjoy your week, enjoy the summer. We'll see you again soon. Thank you.